Hello and welcome to Year 9 Electronics. Today I'm going to show you how to solder and some of the tricks and techniques that are involved. My soldering iron that I'll use, this is my personal soldering station. I've got it set to 350 degrees because I'm using tin solder. So the very important thing with soldering irons is to make sure that the tips are clean. And to do this you give them a good wipe on your sponge. And you'll see if you look at that there, that this is a bright and shiny tip. But just to make sure, before we start, we do what's called tinning. And to tin a soldering iron tip, it involves adding some solder to it and just gently tapping it free. Now you'll notice with this free solder, this tin solder, that it falls a ball, but what you end up with is a bright tip, and that bright tip does not radiate heat so much, so it remains hotter and better and gives you a better joint. Today now what we're going to do is we're going to solder a component for practice, in this case one of those header pins, onto a printed circuit board. But to do this you really want to start with good materials. Here are two pieces of printed circuit board. The one on the right hand side you'll see is bright and shiny, whereas the other one is more tarnished and less good looking. So as a consequence, what you need to do is you need to go and use the brighter one if you can, or clean your own ones up so that they can be used. Now, so what we're going to do is we're going to solder these pins into this bright printed circuit board. Now you always need to work onto a protective mat if you're working on my desks, and here I find it is no exception for me. So what we shall do is that we will make our put our component in and now get ready to solder it. Now to make a good soldering joint you first need to wet the tip. The little bit of solder that you're adding here, and hang on a second, got my tip temperature is just a little bit too far down for that. I'll put it just a little bit over 350 on this. There we go, a bit better. The idea with the solder that melts just on the end of it is that this wets. This allows heat to be efficiently conducted to the copper. Once you've got a tiny little bit of solder there on the end, you can touch your pin from the top, my pin, and you can wet it. And you'll see it wet, and you should see a clean, bright joint like that. Don't touch the solder until it has solidified. I've got a little bit of solder just there. You'll see me do the same thing there. I've just wet the joint and I touch it. Okay, same story there. Small amount of solder. I've just wet the joint and I've touched it. And again there I've got the same thing. I've just wet and touch, and that's done. And the smallest amount of time that you have it in contact, the better. Now you'll note that these are bright and they are shiny. They reflect the light well, and there is not too much solder, and you've got very, very, very clean marks between them, which means that you will not get short circuits. And that is an example of a good solder joint that will last, well, many years, for the lifetime of the thing that you have built. Thank you. And thank you very much for watching this demonstration on soldering. I hope you find it useful, and I hope that it helps you to learn how to solder well. Thank you.
Dad, what's with the glasses? Are you trying to look smart?
No, they are $50 and I can't see the thing that I'm working on.